NATO's multinational, multi-domain exercises known collectively as the Griffin Lightning 25 are currently underway across the Baltic nations and Poland. These exercises are organized by NATO's Multinational Corps Northeast, led by General Dariusz Parylak, who we are now joined by. Thank you for being with us. My first question is, what have been the key challenges which have been identified during these exercises? Which one has been the biggest challenge, and how do you plan to address them?
The most challengeable during that exercise, from my perspective as a Multinational Corps Northeast commander, is to deal with the multinationality. That's the hardest part. I can tell maybe using pictures like this. I have 21 nations in my multinational team. It's not only the language problem, because we can use 21 English, kinds of English, but the most problem is to gain the people on the same page and do the same things based on the different culture. I think the culture and multinationality, that's the two words which is coming the same way.
And what have been some of the key capability gaps which have been identified in terms of the equipment that NATO currently uses?
If you're talking about the equipment, you're mostly talking about the tactical level. I'm talking platoon, company level. As a corps, and even though my subordinate commanders as a divisional level, I'm mostly focusing on the procedures. The vital issue is how we can use it, that human and technical aspects effectively. Then how that the techniques can affect for us. I mean, that's a challenge for the company, even though battalion leaders, commanders, from my perspective, is to put the guys on the one page to do everything in the same sheet of music.
And Valery Zaluzny, the former commander of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, has previously stated that the mode of combat that is currently being implemented by NATO is slightly outdated. How is this being addressed, if at all?
From my perspective, each experience which is very useful for coming from the conflict battles from different variety places can be adapted to our environment, but selectively. We must first analyze that lessons learned or lessons identified, which coming from the even though Ukraine area of responsibility, and transform it for our present capacity or capabilities, because everything doesn't look like we observe from the TV or from the media. We realize that there are two different things coming different way. What we observe is not exactly what is happened. From that reason is too earlier to say everything, how that conflict in the Ukraine looks like. And some of that issue are classified, which I cannot share with you that experience. But I want to stress again, the much more important issue is to transfer that lessons identified in appropriate way and do expected capabilities and capacities as well.
And what is the current state of play of the Baltic Defense Line and the Eastern Shield? What sort of timelines can we expect to see until they become fully operational? And additionally, apart from the volume of investments which have already been announced, do you expect that they will require additional investment?
From my perspective, honestly, I'm force user. I'm not looking on the kitchen how that kind of equipment can be provided for me. I'm only interested in how they use that available and dedicated resources effective way. From that reason, investment is very important for me, but from my perspective, I don't assess my capacity in terms of the investments. I mean, in terms of the financial aspect. I only observe it, and I only take under consideration how I can use effectively. I don't have any huge influence for the forces what are provided for me. I can only focusing on the efficient and using the appropriate procedures and using the lessons learned identified from the different areas of potential and existed conflicts. But that financial kitchen, I can say that way, I'm not interested too much. I'm looking at that from the different, defense and deterrence perspective.
And NATO's Rapid Response Force is set to comprise 300,000 soldiers who would be available for rapid deployment and placed at high readiness. How quickly do you expect that they would be transported to the eastern flank should it be necessary? And how can we realistically transport them there? What sort of modes of transportation would be required?
We start talking about the digits, I mean about quality and quantity. Before I answer directly on your question, I can tell you that I have some of the portion of the forces deployed in area, different way. I mean rotationary, permanent, and I train my soldiers. Some of the part of them are deployed in the area of responsibility. Most of them are deployed in the countries. They train together and they are ready in the scenarios, hypothetical scenario and threat will be not hypothetical, will be real. I had the opportunity to shift them different ways. You must remember, you asked me how fast, but I'm talking about peacetime. And we're still talking about the peacetime. Because nothing happened like yesterday was nothing, it was really nice, and today we have a wartime. From that reason, we must remember that every time when you ask me how fast, I can answer because of the procedures I can do, for instance, in a week or 10 days or 5 days. It depends upon what kind of forces we are talking about. We are talking about the tankers, we are talking about the engineers or reconnaissance guys. You're talking about the fly elements, I mean air forces, or you're talking about the ground forces. That's two different or couple of different questions coming the same way. I can say, right now, I have adequate plans to conduct adequate response. I can do everything faster as I can based on the peacetime, but if something will be creating the wrong case scenario, I can do everything faster.
So, for example,
to confirm you, I have adequate instruments and tools using the ground, even though the sea and air line of communication.
So speaking of ground transportation, specifically the area in which we're currently in, the Baltic states, for example, have the narrow gauge railway systems, which can pose some challenges in terms of the delays which might be encountered on the way. Is that something that you're actually taking into consideration in terms of planning and strategizing for potential combat situations should it be necessary on the eastern flank?
I can tell you something which changed since last 2 years. Because our environment, I mean the eastern flank environment, a little bit changed since the Swedish and Finland joined the NATO. It means that the Baltic Sea is on the NATO influence. And then you can use as a assets 100% available for the NATO and for me as a corps commander for the eastern flank. Before this, we could use it partially. Now, the new challenges and new options are provided to me. And from that reason, I can tell you, coming to the former question and this one, we have better conditions and more possibilities to provide the forces, expected and needed forces on the theater. From that reason, I think now we are much better, in better condition than we were 2 years ago.
And is this the same? So you've mentioned the Baltic Sea and that it's basically an internal NATO sea at this point with Sweden and Finland.
Yes.
Would you say that considering these circumstances, the ports which would actually need to absorb some of the capacities, some of the volumes of soldiers and marines which would make their way to this region should it be necessary, would have the capacity to do so?
Yes, and I start to train that capacity because there's not capacity done like, without any practical issue. Right now I train, even though during that exercise, some of the forces which was provide to conduct common activities was moved using the, I can say, Baltic line of communication. And that's a challenge we just still met and try to improve it. And I think that the next couple of months I'm going to conduct another exercise, which I'm going to use naval assets to check the procedures because we did not train this before, from my perspective as a multinational Northeast Corps commander.
And out of the ports around the Baltic or surrounding the Baltic Sea, are any of them not up to the task of potentially absorbing the volumes of soldiers which we might see in the area?
We can adopt our assets to our necessities. The first thing what I should to do, I'm not me as a personally, my HQ, my staff, my key personnel must to assess what we need to adapt that available assets, I mean the ports and all facilities from the civilian, I can say, market to the military market as well. But I cannot answer you right now because it's quite a time. We start that process and we continue, and I think after the couple sets of training, I can make something like summary to tell you something more. Now it's too earlier. I'm mostly talking about the requirements than on the final products.
And so moving on to air defenses, we know that Poland has invested significantly into its own air defense systems, but are the Baltic air defense systems capable of withstanding any violations from Russia or Belarus?
I think the air assets are really vital, not only for me, if you're talking about holistic, for the society as well, because that's one of the instruments which influence not only for the military perspective, but only for the society, for the regular people. And the available assets right now and critical infrastructure, which is, should be as a pair of that capacity, I think there are enough right now, but it doesn't mean that we don't have to do something more. That means that the first step was done. Some projects, which is most of them are classified because from that reason I cannot elaborate too much, but many projects are ongoing to fix that idea, to create better air defense umbrella. Based on that, even though lessons identified from the Ukraine-Russian conflict, I think the air element was every time vital. Now, because of infrastructure, which is critical, like ports or different, I'm not talking explaining, but you realize what I'm talking about, are very vital right now from the society point of view, but for the military as well.
And speaking of learning from the theatre of war in Ukraine, one of the key aspects which have emerged is the type of ammunition or equipment which is used to leverage warfare. Is this going to impact the type of equipment which will be purchased by NATO alliance, whether it be increasing the volumes of drones which are being purchased or any other types of equipment?
Using forces, we must remember about the sustainment, which is the vital part of the logistic aspect. And you touch very important point, a variety of equipment, variety of different kinds of equipment. That's a huge and vital problem. Maybe not problem, maybe challenge. But I can tell you, we unified ammunition in the NATO. We keep standards. It means doesn't matter from my perspective when I receive artillery guys from Italy or from France, they can use the same standard of ammunition. For instance, as an example, which was more depicted that issue they are talking about. The same with that another resources like fuel, like engineering obstacles, and I don't care right now about ammo if you're talking about the standards. The question is how much I need it. That means I must create some stockpiles. I must prepare some depots for this. And that's a mostly vital issue dedicated for the countries which has provided support in my area of responsibility. But as you said, that's a really critical magnitude issue which we should take under consideration. And this is one of the parts of my military decision-making processes which are prepared by staff. And we treat that problem serious. And the Ukrainian conflict can present that not the amount of the ammo is really important. The precise techniques can allow and can I can say, solve that problem to use precise ammunition instead a lot of the ammunition. But quality and quantity must go in the same way.
Thank you for your time, General. And that was General Dariusz Parylak, the commander of the Multinational Corps Northeast. I'm Zuzanna, Jurek for TVP World.